All right, welcome along, everybody. Restarting. Here we go. Nah. That apparently did not actually fix it. So, well then, good morning, everybody. It's gonna be one of those days, is it? All right. I should have known. Let me get a hat because my hair looks terrible. Hey, Luann, hey, Gene, hey, everybody. Morning, Chris. We'll try this again, but I think it still didn't fix the title. One of those things. Hey, Lorena, hey, Timothy. Welcome along, everybody. That's some torrid stuff there, Benny. Good morning, everybody. First of all, one of Irving Berlin's greatest hits, Blue Skies. Hey, Larry, hey, Keely, hey, Octavio. Morning to all the Mysterians. Hey, Beth, drive carefully. Hey, Kathleen. Hey, Sarah. It is a beautiful day for a tour. I'm in pretty good shape for it. Ooh, I found more string cheese. I thought I'd eaten all of the string cheese that I picked up yesterday. Smoked mozzarella. Nope. Let me get up some of water. Yep. I didn't just find it. I had it out from the fridge like half an hour ago when I thought I had finished all the string cheese. Then I realized, no, there's still a little bit over here. Yep. Morning, Carol. Hey, Lehmans. Hey, all around. It says Gangsters are really going to do some Oakwood stuff. One of those days when Restream just isn't fixing things. Been a bad week for that. And tomorrow I got to deal with setting up a whole new ticketing system. Gonna be great. Morning, Julianne in South Bend. I'm passing through South Bend myself in a little bit. Need to make some text about that. Where's my telephone? Spent the day trying to find, trying to find. Okay, it says Oakwoods on some people's. Good. Spent the morning trying to find the photo shoot pictures from when we did a book trailer for the book Sparks. I did find a more recent version of the manuscript than I've been working off of, so that's something. Oh, hey, Miles. No, you can't have any cheese. But, all right. Morning, Betty. Hey, look who's here. Oh. Oh, Betsy, sorry to hear that. Hey, Gladys. Yep, that's our Miles. Miles, don't knock over the nice bourbon. Please. Yep. Miles fulfilling his contract. Anytime he hears this music, he knows there's going to be pets coming. He's a pretty smart cat. For a guy who still chases his tail all the time when he's 4. Hey, Vicky. Nah, he just likes to play with stuff, and he's resourceful. Where are my... Laura, yeah, we'll be at Graceland next weekend. Probably the last Graceland tour before October explodes. Oh, I love you. Hey, everybody. Betty, yes, I am doing the zoo tours this October. Yeah, I recommend long socks. We're going to try to stay off the road, but they don't always mow there. There's a lot of critters in the grass. I'm going to head down there very shortly so I can do some rehearsal. It's a new one for me at Oakwoods. Today we're going to do some of the stuff that I don't think is going to turn up on the route. Gwendolyn, congrats on that. Hello, Susan. The day you came along. Hey, Jennifer. I'll tell the stars above you. I can never resist the parody line there. I'm gonna quick post a link in the comments, or click that link to get the new edition of Ghosts of Chicago. Warrants and affiliate links, or get anything on Amazon over that link. I don't care. I'll get a few cents either way. All right, good luck to John. Octavio, sure. I haven't seen it today. I hope it looks good. Yeah, I'm thrilled at how well it's been selling online. It's motivated me to get back some of my other old books. Put them out under, there were so many where I hated the title, I hated the cover. I can try to fix this now. Hey, Dana. Hey, Derek. Hey, Grandma Belle. Hey, all around. Hey, everybody. Give it another minute or so. It's a Sunday tour. We don't always start at 10 minutes ahead on Sundays these days. Hey, Mom. Hey, have a good walk on the beach there, Dad. Hey, the niece. I had a whole day yesterday, so I went up. Somebody had told me there was a shop I needed to hit in Milwaukee, which is my favorite Chicago neighborhood, up on the way north side. And really, if Chicago covered the same area as Houston, I think it would include Milwaukee. Octavio, hardcover? I never put out a hardcover myself, so I don't know. There's the difference. What's available is the Kindle edition and the paperback. Good morning, everybody. Give it a couple extra minutes to get started today while I eat my rando cheese. Of course, any trip to Milwaukee, you gotta hit the Cheese Castle.
And they all loved it. They all loved
I spent a little too much money up at the Cheese Castle.
And now another one just in the same vein.
I remember When I was first writing the book that became Sparks, that I'm now working on again a little bit, I was eating a lot of like bread cheese, the cheese that you can grill. Every night I'd grill up some cheese, have a cup of coffee, and just work on that book at the kitchen table, and with a great playlist. It's one of my favorite experiences writing was doing that book. So I got some more bread cheese yesterday. Still got the playlist. Can't find the photo shoot. Thanks, Data's husband. Printing up a hardcover, I don't know, I think it is quite a bit more of a price difference. And I know from experience, hardcovers, most of my books only came out in hardcover. A lot of my novels, anyway. Usually, if they're only putting your book out in hardcover, it means they're not really trying to sell it, in my experience. Or it means you're on the schools and libraries plan. We'll give it just a second. Let Betty finish up this tune and we'll get started. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Burp. Ooh, purple, purple. Now comes in purple, purple. Woke up yesterday with the Muppet Babies version of Rock Me Amadeus stuck in my head. Bad. Play it for me, Wolfgang Amadeus. Luckily on the YouTube area you can find that stuff like that. That and that Chuck E. Cheese commercial where they warn you that at any other restaurant you'll get crabs. Seafood restaurants have crabs! Benny Goodman coming to you live from the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. That's about enough time for everybody to get on. We start a little bit early, so I'm going to do a bit more than I normally do on a Sunday. So welcome along, everybody. Everybody say hi to Miles the cat over here. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. I've been a historian and tour guide in Chicago for going on 20 years. Author of such books as Mysterious Chicago, The Book, H.H. Holmes, The True History of the White City Devil, Ghosts of Chicago, which is now out in a brand new 10th anniversary expanded edition. Going to put the link back in the comments one more time right there. And also, Graceland Cemetery, Chicago, Stories, Symbols, and Secrets. And under another name, I did this book, Sparks, which I'm now going to rewrite a little bit. I got the rights back. I'm going to put it back out. The hood ornament, the shape like Buddha, was the publisher's idea. I thought that's going to get me in trouble. So I'm going to outright that out and change it to like a little blue alien like it should have been in the first place or something. Not bitter at all. Also, the title is just awful. But all right, welcome along, everybody. I'm Adam. I'm totally over all the trauma of my past, and we're time to get going on other people's past today. Today at 1 o'clock, we are doing the first walking tour that I've hosted officially at Oakwood Cemetery down here on the south side of Chicago. I'm very excited about this. I found some really cool stories. I found some really interesting connecting threads that I don't think people would be, that I don't think have ever shown up on one of the tours there. This is really exciting stuff. I love it when I can find all these ways that people interact with each other, and when someone who's not even in the cemetery tends to like weave in and out of everybody's stories. There's a few people I can do that with here. There's one particular for this round of the tour. Maybe next time it'll be somebody else. Assuming there is a next time. But today what we're going to do for the morning mini tour, or the morning regular tour, is we're going to talk about some places at Oakwood Cemetery where we'll be going today that I don't think are going to make it onto the walking tour route. And when something doesn't make it onto a walking tour route, the reason why is almost 100% of the time the same thing. It's geography. Some things are just too far of a walk, too far away from everything else. Though we will, of course, probably be walking by the barbecue pit. Possibly. I gotta double check exactly what we're out with. There's still a portion of the route that I'm gonna go experiment with before we get started. But let me cruise on down a little bit. This is the Jewish section where we've done cleanups a couple of years now, but now another group has taken that task on. Somebody else is actually going to do that. And I was there the other day, and it's actually looking fantastic now. They've got it all cleaned up. Right across from it is one of my favorite finds in Chicago. This is Elizabeth S. Holton, who is almost invariably said to have been murdered by H.H. Holmes, even though she died in 1933. Same with her husband, William. When Holmes first came to Chicago, the Devil in the White City guy, he got a job in the pharmacy of Dr. Holton. And the way that 20th century writers have always told this story is that Dr. Holton was an old man who was slowly dying of prostate cancer upstairs, while his poor hapless old lady wife, Elizabeth, tried to run the place all by herself, so she was only too happy to hire this energetic young go-getter, Mr. Holmes. Shortly thereafter, the two disappeared. Holmes told everybody they had moved to California and they were never seen again. And this is something that I got a little suspicious of while researching Holmes. You know, it turned out to be something that Herbert Asbury made up. He took some actual sources. There was like one like traveling salesman who was telling people in Denver that I believe that lady was never seen again. Turned out Dr. Holton was not an old man at all. Dr. Holton was a young woman. She was only a couple of years older than Holmes was herself. Her husband had some kind of job on the railway. And as you can see, they both lived well into the 20th century. But also you can see right next to it, Abby, their daughter, died in 1895. So that may explain why they never talked to Dr. Holton during the whole big Holmes investigation in the summer of 1895. She was off grieving the death of her daughter. And Holmes was in prison by then, so he's totally off the hook for that one, too. There's also, not to mention, there's quite a few serial killer connections here at Oakwood Cemetery, more and more of them. In fact, one of them that I just found in the process of working on the book, of working on this tour, that I'm really excited to talk about. It's going to be next week's story on Patreon. Patreon down there, sign up now. It's really cool. Welcome along. Here we've got a detective who was involved in quite a few of those particular cases, though not the Holmes one, George M. Shippey. George M. Shippey was chief of police for a while in the early 20th century in Chicago, and known as kind of a nut. He was always doing things like propping up dead bodies with their fingers extended so they could point at various suspects to see if he would scare them into confessing. Whether he could have really even done this or not, it was reported in several papers, and not the most sensationalistic papers. Whether he could have even done this is very tricky. This is also the same guy who, in that same case, had rented a horse that he thought might magically take him to the actual murderer. Didn't work. Eventually, his last day on the job, a guy named Lazarus Averbuck knocked on his door in the middle of the night. We don't really know what the heck Lazarus was doing there. All we know is that Inspector Shippey thought, hey, he looks like a terrorist, and shot him to death. He looked Jewish at the time. That meant Eastern European, and that meant socialist. There had been some unrest lately. Exactly what Averbuck was doing there, we really don't know. That the cops made it look as much as they could like they knew he was there to assassinate the chief of police, but really, there's no real evidence. Nobody stopped to ask questions. And what if multiple people stare at the body? Good question. Now, he was actually in the cemetery for the exhumation of Marie Walker Hawk, which would have been over in here someplace. They wouldn't give me the exact coordinates of where Marie was buried. But this is Marie Walker Hawk. She was the last Chicago victim of Johann Hawk. Seen here looking like Spider-Man. I call this the Hawkerman shot. Marie was a divorcee. She was operating a candy store in the Lincoln Park neighborhood when she met Johann Hawk through a personal ad in the newspapers. They talked for about half an hour. He said, all right, I like you, you like me, we can get married then, yeah? So they got married about a week later, and 6 weeks after that, she died of kidney trouble, most likely induced by arsenic. So her body was exhumed here eventually. You can see Mr. Shippey right there digging up her coffin. Now, there is a photograph of her inside of the coffin, too, that was taken shortly thereafter. She was probably in very good shape. It hadn't been that long. She had been embalmed, and it had also been frozen out there. They had to wait for the coffin to thaw out a little bit. There was a photograph. I have not seen the photograph. It probably no longer exists. Though we do have pictures of Coroner Luke going through all of her organs, doing tests to determine whether there was arsenic in there. Which in fact there was, and in fact the arsenic is presumably still there. Arsenic is an element, it doesn't decompose, it doesn't biodegrade. But the reason we know is that while she was still lying dead in the bed, Hawk proposed to her sister Amelia. Amelia said yes. And it was widely believed by the police initially, Shippey was absolutely certain that Amelia had been complicit in her sister's murder. They later stopped pursuing that line of inquiry just because they really wanted Amelia to testify against Hawk. And she didn't seem to want to play ball. And I think it's entirely possible that when she absolutely forgave Hawk and absolutely defended him in court, she might have really just been covering her own butt. Because she was trying to establish, no, Marie was sick, she died of natural causes, which would have gotten her off the hook as well. Now, one of my biggest reasons for suspecting this is that she used to torment her next husband after Hawk, saying, like, here's the rope that we used to hang my ex-husband, my last husband, and I can use it on you, too. Then she attacked him with a chicken. Like you do. We will talk about this one a little bit, but it's way out of the walk. Another thing that's out of the walk that might surprise people is we're not really going to cover too much about the Confederate mound here. It's one of the largest mass graves in the United States, some say the largest, of prisoners who died at Camp Douglas, our Confederate prisoners of war camp. You all know what I think about Confederate monuments. Here's General Lee looking like Darth Maul. There's General Lee with my middle finger at the Capitol. The Jeff Davis statue is still there at the Capitol. They got rid of Robert E. Lee. But up in front of this is one that we will cover a little bit. This is known as the Abolitionist Cenotaph by most people. But by others, the Neo-Confederates hate this thing. They call it the Ugly Stone. We will talk about the guy who had this put here. A monument to those unknown heroic men, once resident of the southern states, martyrs for human freedom, who at the breaking out of the Civil War refused to be traitors to the Union, who without moral or material support stood alone against ruthless enemies. The stone is raised and inscribed after 30 years waiting by one of themselves, an exiled abolitionist. This was added by a guy who was rather annoyed by the fact that they were putting in this big Confederate monument here and trying to erase. It was part of that late 19th, early 20th century attempt to say it was all the lost cause. It was all about Southern freedom. It wasn't about slavery. And the guy who had this put up there said, I know what they're teaching kids in the schools down there. I know they're telling them that this was all right, that they were still correct, and I know this is going to have long-lasting consequences. We'll cover him a little bit for sure. His actual grave is right on the route. So even at the time this came up, there were huge crowds. The president was there to unveil the monument, but there was definitely opposition at the time too. But right in view of it, you can see it in the background there with the cannons. Right in view, in fact, staring it down, really, is John Johnson. This mausoleum. John Johnson was the founder of Ebony and Jet magazine. Failure is a word I don't accept, it says on the mausoleum. That's an interesting epitaph. Perhaps best known for publishing the photo of Emmett Till in his casket so people could see what had been done to him. After allegedly whistling at a white woman while visiting down south, he was brutally murdered. His mother insisted the picture of him in the open casket be shown. He's buried out at Burr Oak Cemetery. But this was a major movement for civil rights. It showed people just what's really going on in the South, something that people like Ida B. Wells, who we will talk about today, had been trying to talk about for some time. Let's see. Another one that's way out of the way that we won't get to, and anyway, this guy kind of sucks. Cap Anson. Well, he didn't suck at baseball. Cap Anson. It was a first baseman mostly for the Chicago Cubs, played in the major leagues for 26 years in the late 1800s. Pretty well remembered even by people such as Mr. Burns.
Give them token jobs at the plant and have them play on our softball team. Honus Wagner, Cap Anson, Mordecai Three-Finger Brown.
Sir?
What is it, Smithers?
I'm afraid all those players have retired and passed on. In fact, your right fielder has been dead for 130 years.
Damnation!
Cap Anson, well, known as being racist as hell, wouldn't even play in exhibition games against black ball players. Even Ty Cobb would do that, and he was pretty famously racist himself. Ended up just doing vaudeville with his daughters in the early 20th century. He would bat papier-mâché baseballs out into the audience. Started a bunch of businesses himself, but they all blew up. They kind of blew all the money he had made. Speaking of baseball, another guy we won't quite get to, he's just a little ways out of the way. There's another baseball guy who shows up a lot in Chicago history. He's also in the Johann Hawk story, Kennesaw Mountain Landis. His father was a veteran of the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain and actually named him after it against the objections of a whole lot of family members who might have been pointing out that Kennesaw Mountain has two ends, not just the one. Kennesaw Mountain Landis became a judge who was known for being something a lot of judges weren't, which is unpredictable. Newspaper reporters could just kind of hang around his courtroom. Word got around that there's a real character on the bench in this Kennesaw Mountain Landis guy. And in fact, when they were making a last-ditch effort to save the neck of Johann Hawk, previously mentioned, a couple of lawyers, including one guy who used to represent H.H. Holmes now and then, showed up in front of Kennesaw Mountain Landis to get a stay of execution, and kind of surprisingly got one. They delayed it for a little bit. Not for very long, but Kennesaw Mountain Landis ruled that, yeah, if you can get this stuff together before I get back from lunch, we can delay the hanging. And they delayed it a little bit. But later on, after the Black Sox scandal, when it came out that several members of the Chicago White Sox had been had offered to throw the series for gamblers, they realized that this is a major tarnishing on baseball just in general. What are we, this is, people are never going to trust us again. We've got to bring in some outside person whose authority will be unquestioned. So they brought in Kennesaw Mountain Landis to be the commissioner of baseball, which was a lifetime appointment. Because of that, nowadays he's kind of hit his reputation has kind of taken a blow lately because throughout his tenure, he didn't break the color barrier. Now, exactly what his attitude towards it is difficult to say nowadays. He used to say, I'm not enforcing any color barrier. If a team wanted to hire a black ball player, that would be entirely up to them. I wouldn't stop it. He also didn't really seem to have done anything to encourage it either. There's a lot of debate about to what extent he should be considered responsible. Some people have talked about having his name taken off of MVP trophies. Mike Schmidt offers to send his back to have them re-engraved under that circumstance. So good for Mike Schmidt. We've got a Mike Schmidt baseball right here, in fact. The things I find on my desk. I'll also point out that I think one of the reasons... Now, it's hard to say what we should... I'm always very bullish about take down all the Confederate monuments, but in so many parts of the country, the ultimate end goal is just to get them moved to the cemetery. Here at Oak Woods, they're at least already in the cemetery. But it's hard not to notice that the statue that they've got for those guys is quite a lot nicer than the Abraham Lincoln statue. We'll just cover this briefly here. And we'll pop over to the side a bit. This is Captain Ayres. Captain Ayres was a Civil War soldier who won the Medal of Honor, as it says right there on it. Captain Ayres had been involved in... I got my notes on him a little bit. I've kind of let go the ones that aren't going to be on here. But David Ayres, Medal of Honor for bravery. He was a part of the Vicksburg campaign. General Grant had organized a whole party to build a bridge across a moat and set up ladders at a Confederate fort. This was a horribly dangerous mission. And in fact, it was such a dangerous mission that only single men would be accepted. Because it was considered almost a suicide mission, and in fact, it turned out to be one. About 150 of people signed up for it, including David Ayres, but half of them were killed. and they didn't get close to actually building the bridge. The Red Hoods, most of them half of them were killed. The rest of them got medals. There's Captain David Ayers right here, looking like he's just thrilled to be posing for a picture. How long must he have been marching the day that they took that shot? I gotta wonder. And right near him is an interesting monument to a grain explosion. Now, in 1939, there was a grain elevator that exploded in what was the worst fire in 8 years in Chicago. It killed at least 8 people, injured at least a dozen more. It was the Rosenbaum Brothers Grain Company. And at the time, this was a major problem. In the last 20 years, hundreds of people, about 300 people, had been killed in grain elevator explosions. These grain elevators would be filled with invisible dust particles, particles that you couldn't see, but which were entirely flammable. And they were so densely packed that even a bit of flame could lead to a chain reaction that led to a whole explosion in the place. This grain elevator burned so hot that when the firefighters shot water at it, it would immediately evaporate and turn into steam. All they could do was just watch it burn up. So, among those people were these 4. They couldn't identify their bodies completely because there was really just not much left. But several months later, they took these 4 that couldn't be identified separately and buried them here. And about 10 years before that, in 1928, right across the street, this would have been about the site of the Granada Cafe, where there was a radio murder in 1928. New Year's Eve, Guy Lombardo and his orchestra were playing when a couple of guys walked in and shot Stubby McGovern and Gunner McFadden. Try saying that 3 times fast. Stubby McGovern and Gunner McFadden. Stubby McGovern and Gunner McFadden. Shot to death right in the cafe. And a lot of people, they were broadcasting live out of the radio, out of the cafe that night. A lot of people believed the next day they had heard the murder on the air. Now, WBBM said that they weren't actually broadcasting at the time. No recording survived. You can imagine people might have heard just some drums or something. They said there's no way to know for sure. It became one of those radio urban legends. Another one I don't think we'll get to, it's just a little ways out, but still interesting itself, is the statue of Kate Richardson, who was the wife of a carpet dealer named Orlo Richardson. I just ran across a big ad for Orlo Richardson carpets the other day. But she died in 1890 at the age of 40. She came from the Quad Cities, from Davenport. And there was about all we can really find about her is this one note about their marriage that said, "Did just right. Like sensible people determined on future happiness, our young friend O.W. Richardson and the accomplished Miss Kate Tiffany sought the services of Reverend Mr. Lamb yesterday afternoon and were married. It is a noble example and worthy of emulation. We congratulate them. May their wedding tour be delightful and the long and rugged pathway of life be strewn with flowers of unfading love, garlands of happiness, and satisfactory packages of greenbacks." Somebody would seem to have to fill a bit of space here. So, all right, those are, there's another one right here. There's also, this hymn, Night of the Hunter. Oh, this is going to get me. On the everlasting arms. That is a poem written by Elisha Hoffman, or a hymn, who's also here. Guy wrote hundreds and hundreds of hymns over the course of his career. Hymn writers tended to be fairly prolific people. 2,000, they say. The best known of which remains Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. Served a very short stint, about 2 months in the Union Army, July and August of 1863. So that's a bit of a preview of stuff that we won't be covering most likely today on account of mostly just geography. Some upcoming tours in person, August 31st, virtually August 31st, next week, on Thursday. Something, I haven't decided yet. I'll probably use it once we've got all the stuff from Peak, the new ticketing company, set up. I'll kind of experiment by adding something for Thursday and see how that goes. This afternoon, 1 p.m., Oakwood Cemetery. That is coming right up. And next weekend, we will be at Graceland for probably the last time until the big October season. So, all right, everybody. So that's just a quick one for today. Thanks a lot for joining me once again. I'm going to get back to a little bit of work on Sparks, bringing that book back in under its original title, Debbie Does Detention. Though I realized it could have been called Be Gay, Do Crimes. That wasn't a slogan people, at least that I didn't know in 2011 when I was writing it. It might have attracted a little bit more attention as a YA novel with that title. Certainly would now. I'm going to post the link one more time for the Ghosts of Chicago book. That link has been working out well for me this week. Enjoying that. So, all right, everybody. It is a beautiful day outside. It's a perfect day for a walking tour, cemetery or otherwise. I am looking forward to it myself. Thanks a lot for joining me. Free slice. Hey, is it your birthday, Beth? Happy birthday, Beth. Enjoy the Portillo's birthday cake shake is delicious. So I will see many of you this afternoon. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours, telling you all to stay safe and stay strong. And of course, if you can, stay spooky, everybody. 1 p.m. today.